Hi all, I'm Elizabeth Pinio. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a PhD candidate here at the University of Maryland College of Information. I am also a writing fellow at the Center for Writing and Oral Communication, which supports graduate students across all stages of the writing process. Now, regardless of where you are in the MLIS, you've probably noticed how common APA style is in our program. But what is it and how does it work? Let's talk about it. There are a number of citation styles out there, but the big ones are Chicago, MLA, and APA. The humanities tend to use MLA or Chicago, the arts tend to use Chicago, the sciences tend to use APA, and finally, the social sciences, us, tend to use APA or Chicago. Each citation style does things a little differently. Chicago, for example, is quite flexible and handles things like artwork really well. MLA tends to be good for a literary focus, and APA tends to focus on the recency of research, which is why the publication dates of things are so foregrounded in it. Now, like anything in the world, citation styles evolve. Organizations release new versions of their styles to ensure they meet the needs of present day users. After all, our research needs in 2026 are just different from those of researchers decades ago. So, citation styles are version numbered, just like computer software. Right now, we are on APA 7, which means that there have been 6 versions of it before this one. So we will focus on 7 today, but I'll keep these principles general enough that you can easily adapt them for future iterations of the style as it evolves. Students often come to me asking for advice on specific citation scenarios, and I've compiled those common questions here. So we're going to cover everything from the basic formatting of a references page to the citing of podcasts and journal articles. To help you do those things, the QR code that is floating in that top right corner of the screen will stay there for the duration of the video, and it goes to APA's examples page. All you need to do to get help for a particular format is to scan that, then find the listing for the format you're looking for. So, why do we cite? Regardless of citation style, there are a number of reasons, but primary among them is to give credit. You wouldn't want someone using your ideas without giving you credit for them, so we don't use others' ideas without giving them credit. Citations are how we do that. Citations also let us demonstrate to our reader that we have read and understood the things we're citing. Citing specific authors' works lets us do things like demonstrate that we've done a comprehensive study of the field, situate ourselves in a certain lineage, or emphasize certain voices, but not others. In short, citations are powerful tools. So when do we use them? We cite whenever we need to give credit, and that is far more frequent than you think it is. In fact, the most important takeaway from this video, regardless of your specific discipline within information studies, is something those of you who know me are probably tired of hearing. If it didn't originate in your own brain, cite it. If you don't, it doesn't matter if the plagiarism is unintentional, it's still plagiarism. When you cite properly, you are essentially creating a map that allows your readers to trace your ideas back to the original sources of knowledge, then to evaluate those sources for themselves if they want to. It strengthens your argument and gives you credibility. There are 2 types of in-text citations in APA: narrative and parenthetical. In a narrative citation, you weave the author into the sentence structure. For example, Smith, 2020, argues that true accessibility requires more than just following standards, page 24. In a parenthetical citation, you push the citation to the end of the sentence. For example, some have argued that true accessibility requires more than just following standards. Smith, 2020, page 24. If you're using a direct quotation from the source, don't forget the P for a single page or PP for a range. For example, Smith 2020 argues that achieving true accessibility requires that we go beyond standards, pages 22 through 23. Or, Smith 2020 argues that achieving true accessibility requires that we go beyond standards, page 22. Now, we've covered the how, but let's briefly touch on the how much. When writing a literature review or a discussion section, you might find yourself citing heavily. That's appropriate. You're building your argument with ideas from others, and you need to give them credit. However, avoid citation dumping. The act of placing a whole bunch of citations at the end of a sentence just to prove you did the reading without actually synthesizing the information. If you're synthesizing ideas, make sure your voice remains the primary driver of the narrative. You can use citations to, say, back up your claims, provide definitions, or offer contrasting viewpoints. But you want to make sure that you don't let the citations speak for you. Your voice should always be the dominant one. If you find yourself relying too much on quotations, it's probably because you aren't synthesizing yet. If you find yourself stuck on how to format a specific citation, the APA website is always your best resource. You might also find while working on a project that you're citing the same things over and over, or you end up in a research area where you cite the same things across multiple projects on repeat. In that case, using a citation manager like Zotero, Mendeley, or EndNote can be really helpful. Those tools can also automatically export citations in particular formats for you, which makes writing references lists, which we will talk about in just a moment, much easier. My personal recommendation is Zotero, but UMD has access to all three of those. The references page starts on a new page at the very end of your document. The word references, always plural, even if you're only citing one source, should appear centered and bolded on the first line. Each citation needs to be formatted using hanging indents. This means that the first line of the citation is flush to the left and every subsequent line is indented. One of the most common mistakes I see is manually formatting those indents. Please save yourself the headache and use your word processor's built-in features. No need to use tabs or excessive spaces here. You can find simple guides for doing that in Google Docs, Word, or Pages online. Just search hanging indents and the name of your word processor. Finally, a word of caution. Avoid relying solely on the suggested citations or auto-generated citation tools in databases. While they are useful for gathering metadata, things like author, title, year, that sort of thing, they are rarely formatted correctly according to APA standards, even if they say they are. Always double check them against the official APA style guidelines. As for cover pages, that's usually up to the professor. Many professors here at UMD don't require them, and those that do will usually let you know. If you're submitting something formally outside of UMD, I would suggest including one just to be on the safe side. Now, let's talk about some examples of how you would structure your citations themselves. You may have noticed that the titles in that references list were in what's called sentence case instead of traditional title case. In APA, titles of works on your references list are written in sentence case. This means that you only capitalize the first word of the title, the first word of the subtitle, or the word following the colon, and any proper nouns. Title case, on the other hand, has you capitalize every word except small words. Historically, this was to save money on printing costs because capital letters had to be manually swapped out for the lowercase letters, which increased the amount of time printing took. But today, it's standard because it's more readable, especially for those with print disabilities. Citation managers often struggle to get this capitalization correct, so you do have to do it by hand most of the time, but the rule is clear. And do note, this only applies to titles in your references list, not to the title of your own paper. Citing web content can be tricky, but essentially you include the author, the date of publication, the year first, then the month and day, the title of the web page, italicized, the name of the website, and the link to the page. If the name of the website is the same as the author, you omit it. The thing to remember here is that web page titles are italicized and written in sentence case, but the website title is not. This is a reversal of what you'll see with journal articles and most other items, so do be careful. Always check the official APA webpage citation guidelines to make sure you're giving the right information. You will also notice that the author name goes last name and then gives only the first initial of the first name. If the author gives their middle name, you'll include that middle initial too. You'll do the same for every author on the piece, and this is the same for every type of citation you're going to make in APA. And that segues us nicely into journal articles. Journal articles are the bread and butter of graduate research. When you cite a journal article, the format is generally author, year, This is the same so far as the web page citation we saw, with the exception that you don't include the month or day, just the year. Article title in sentence case. Journal name, again italicized. Volume number, italicized. Issue number, in parentheses. Page range, and then the DOI. Pay attention to two things here. First, the volume and issue numbers. The volume number is the italicized number before the parentheses. Journals come out in annual volumes, and they often have multiple issues per volume, say one for spring, summer, and fall. The comma between the journal title and the volume number is not italicized. Second, the dash between page numbers. That is an end dash, not a hyphen. A hyphen is the short dash on your keyboard. An end dash is slightly longer and is the correct punctuation for ranges. If you type a standard hyphen, it is technically incorrect. And if you would like more information about those, you can watch the video linked in the description. Now, I won't go through a full book citation here, but know that you only use a book citation if you're citing the whole book. This is kind of rare in graduate coursework where we usually reference specific chapters. There are specific styles for books, edited books, and book chapters, so just make sure that you're using the right format depending on what you're actually citing. Podcasts are increasingly common in academic discourse. You generally include the host or producer, the date, the episode title italicized, the type of media in brackets, the name of the podcast series, and the link. In your in-text citations, you'll need to include timestamps, which function here in place of page numbers, to help the reader locate the specific moment you're referencing. And remember, the website where you listen to the podcast is not necessarily the actual distributor, although sometimes it is. So just be careful about where you're pulling that source information from. To cite a YouTube video in APA style, include the creator or uploader's name, the date of publication, the video's title, italicized, the name of the hosting platform, in this case, YouTube, and the direct URL. If you're citing specific moments within the video, use timestamps just like a podcast. Other video formats are provided on APA's website, including TED Talks, movies, television shows, and online courses. To cite a class lecture in APA style, include the instructor's name, the date of the lecture, the title of the lecture, italicized, the format in brackets, so for instance, lecture recording or PowerPoint slides, the name of the department and university. If you have a link to the materials, you would also provide that here. For in-text citations, use the instructor's last name and the year of the lecture, just like anything else. Now, let me also note that you will only use this style if the people reading your material can actually access the materials you're referencing. If they couldn't access it, you don't cite the lecture material as lecture material. Instead, you cite it as personal communication, which brings us to conversations and interviews. In APA, personal communications, which include private conversations or interviews that are not recorded or publicly available, are cited in text only because they don't provide recoverable data for the reader. So there's no references list entry for them. Include the initials and last name of the communicator, followed by the phrase personal communication and the specific date. If you're citing what APA calls traditional knowledge or oral traditions of Indigenous peoples, you can read their full description of how to cite that material in the personal communication section of their website too. So, as we sum up here, remember that you don't need to remember everything in this video. You just need to know where to find the guidelines on APA's website and how to apply them. Citations are a foundational skill in the MLIES program and for librarians and information professionals writ large. Plus, as I've hoped you see here, they're just generally cool to learn about. And remember, if it didn't originate in your own brain, cite it. If you need help or even just clarification with anything in the writing process, the Center for Writing and Oral Communication is always here. You can schedule a consultation with us online or in person at our website, scan the QR code. We help with everything from brainstorming to final edits to presentations to, you guessed it, citations. Have fun with your research and happy citing. Best of luck, and thank you so very much for watching.